Hey everyone, welcome back to the second week of the Future of Work Weekly Report. If you're new to this channel, this is the Untangled Vines Redefining the Rules of Work community presented by Grapevine Software, the virtual office platform for your remote and hybrid workforce to stay connected and engaged from anywhere in the world. With that being said, if you are someone who is a future of work pioneer or just someone looking to learn and stay up to date about what's going on in the working world as it constantly changes today, then you are in the right place. This is the Future of Work Weekly Report, and we're going to be diving into some of the articles from this week that people are talking about. But first, before we get started, intro. All right, Untangled Viners, let's go ahead and dive into it because we have a jam-packed episode today. We're going to be discussing 3 to 4 articles, depending on how long the video goes. But what we're going to start with today is an article on Business Today. The topic is the future of skills. Technological disruptions need to be embraced and not feared. So I've kind of gone through back and forth in my mind, how is the best way or what is the best way to present this information? And so in some cases, I'm going to be reading the bullet points and then talking about my opinion on them and thoughts and ways that you can adapt or grow or leverage Grapevine to overcome these challenges. In other cases, I'm going to be reading straight through them and then tying that all together. So the first set of bullet points here from this article is embrace technological disruptions. Instead of fearing technological advances, organizations should embrace them. These innovations have the power to reshape industries, and businesses must equip their teams with the necessary skills to adapt and thrive. Now, since these bullet points are kind of compounding on one another, I'm going to go ahead and go to the next one and the next one, and then we'll tie it all together. So the other key takeaway here, which kind of compounds, as I mentioned, on the bullet point number 1, which is embrace technological disruptions, is need for continuous learning. And what they say here is the pace of technological change demands a continuous learning mindset. Businesses must reinvent themselves alongside evolving technologies to avoid obsoleteness, if that's a word. Emphasis, which is kind of what the article is based on, the company Emphasis, they have a digital Pentagon framework, and that exemplifies a systemic approach to reskilling and upskilling its workforce. So let me go ahead and dive a little bit deeper into the 5 categories of the digital Pentagon, and they are insight. And so insight is going to be making informed decisions to drive effectiveness. They're saying that this is going to be a skill needed in the future of work. Innovate is number 2, constructing new models to boost business outcomes. And I like that they're focusing on outcomes opposed to hours in the office or butts in seats or the monitoring systems that they have out there. If you are using a monitoring system, I'm sorry, but that's probably interrupting trust from your employees. So innovate, we're going to have to think about that. How can we create innovation as a skill, right? Accelerate, number 3 in the digital Pentagon, harnessing automation to enhance efficiency. Now, I think that this could be a skill that people learn in addition to the other tools that are out there. So 1, how can we learn this? The ability to automate certain things to become more efficient as an organization. But in the same sense, how can we consolidate? That's what we do at Grapevine. We're taking all these different tools, all these different pieces of knowledge, and we're putting it into one platform where you have the information living in the same place that you're communicating and collaborating with. Doesn't that make sense? It does to us. That's why we're building it. We hope you agree too, or we might be out of business. So that's there. Okay. And then assure is number 4, ASSURE. U-R-E, safeguarding and improving compliance. And I think this is extremely important for remote and hybrid organizations where you have some people working in the office, some people working in a different continent, a different time zone, and just the distributed aspect of it is going to be an emphasis on the importance of compliance, and not only compliance from a business standpoint, but a compliance in that country. Now, there's a lot of growing organizations that are helping companies achieve this. I think Velocity Global is a company that I met at an event one time, and they help you hire from anywhere in the world and kind of take care of that aspect of it. I could be getting a couple of details wrong there, so don't quote me on it, but you can look it up and look more into that. And then the last one is experience. Prioritizing humanware, they have that in quotations, to increase stakeholder satisfaction. The way that I look at experience is not experience of I have 30 years of experience or I have 10 years of experience in this specific field, but more so user experience. And user experience now is not just customer, but it's also employee. Because a lot of employees are really taking it upon themselves and forcing, in the rightful manner, forcing employers to think about how the employee experiences their organization. Now, some people might call Grapevine an employee experience platform, but we are a little bit more than that. We're a virtual headquarters, we're a virtual office platform where, yes, we care about the employee experience, but we also care about getting the work done, right? So that's where we differentiate. But that's what they're talking about here. And I think what's going to be important is how can we leverage the new technology that is out there? Obviously, AI, AGI, how can we leverage that to provide employees with a tailored or personalized approach to onboarding, to training, to just experiencing what they're experiencing as a worker, right? Those are the types of things that we're talking about. So just to recap, insight, innovate, accelerate, assure, experience. These are the things that they think at Emphasis, and I tend to agree for the most part, that is going to be important for the future of work and really the future of skills. Now, the other bullet points to just continue on the key takeaways from this article, and we will link all the articles that we talk about today in the show notes if you want to dig a little bit deeper into them, which we recommend, is skill categorization. And what they're talking about here is Emphasis categorizes skills into 5 categories, which is what we talked about. But then they also categorize them into past, present, and future skills. So that segues into the 4th bullet point that they call out here, which is future skill demands. So future job roles will require a blend of technical expertise and adaptability. So they give a call out here like full stack engineering will with comprehensive technological understanding and learnability are likely to be in high demand. This is one of the things that I want to push back on a little bit. I don't think that you necessarily have to be full-on technical to have high demand. What I do think that you have to be able to do is, again, embrace the technological changes that we're seeing in the world, in the market, and use that to your advantage as a worker, whether that's a leader or an individual contributor or part of a team, right? Like you want to be able to grow, learn, and adapt into this ever-evolving, changing world that we're in today. And what they're specifically calling out is how does the company allow employees to have a way to get that future skill, right? So if we're talking about that, right, we're teaching, or we need to teach employees how to grasp these things that are happening in the world of future of skills. And then how can we as companies deliver the resources or the assets that they need to be able to learn that and progress, right? And then this kind of ties it all together, which is the last bullet point of this article, which is importance of lifelong learning. So in a rapidly changing workplace, adaptability, resilience, effectiveness or effective communication, and lifelong learning are becoming increasingly valuable. The ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn will be crucial for staying relevant in the evolving job market. To wrap up this article, before we go to the next one, this is where we would talk about the conversations that a lot of people are having today on AI, right? A lot of people are scared or fearful of AI replacing them in their position. But I want to give you another thought to think about on this. It's not that AI or AGI is going to take our jobs. What is going to happen is the employees who get promoted, the ones that outlast the other people, are going to be the employees who don't see technology as a threat, but they see it as an additive, right? And what I mean by this is if you work the same way that you worked 5 years ago compared to now, then you are not going to get promoted. You're not going to adapt and grow in your organization, because the people who are going to grow are the people who 5 years ago to now have seen the changes in the market, especially with AI, and they leverage that to help them get more done, to help them get more done effectively, efficiently, and to help or have or use AI to help them to have better outcomes at their job. For example, the way that I do this, especially at Grapevine, is we have a software development team that is really focused on the development aspect of it. That means that business, finance, operations, go-to-market all falls on me, which is 100% okay. That's where my sweet spot is. And so what I have to do is operate as a full team. I leverage AI almost every single day, whether it's to help me brainstorm and then think through certain things, or whether it's helping me write a blog that would take me hours to do and then edit it and then actually post it. Now I can kind of get started, read through it, add the things that make sense, take away the things that don't, and then post that, right? Same thing with captions and all that kind of stuff, email sequences for sales outreach. The point is, you have to have a lifelong learning mindset, or what Carol Dweck would call a growth mindset. If you don't, then you are going to get left behind. But the thing is, don't blame that on AI or technology. That's an unwillingness for you to adapt. That is what's happening there. So that's the first article. Again, it was from Business Today, and I think that those are some key important things that you can take away. Again, I highly recommend that you go through and read the article to get the full gist of it, and then maybe even do a little bit more of a deep dive by looking elsewhere as well. So now we're going to go to article number 2, which is from the New York Times. Whether you like them or hate them or you're indifferent, this is a good call out, and the title is going to sound like, well, duh, Zach, no, like it makes sense, but let me dig in a little bit deeper before you shut off. So this article from the New York Times, the topic is the zip code shift, why many Americans no longer live where they work. And the reason I say it's a duh is because, yes, we had the pandemic. A lot of people moved. They didn't have to go into the office, so they were giving that ability. But beyond that, this is the key takeaway, or the set of bullet points that we saw as the key takeaways from this article. Remote work redefines commuting. Remote and hybrid work models have led to a significant shift in where people live relative to their workplaces. White-collar workers, especially those earning over 100K, are increasingly living further away from their offices, with the average distance doubling from 2019 to 2023. And they're calling this the zip code shift. That's the second bullet point. This is where employees, particularly those with jobs that can be done remotely, are moving away from urban centers or cities to suburban or even rural areas, often in pursuit of larger homes and more space for their family. Now, that sounds like a great thing, right? But what they're focusing on in this article is the distance being doubled, and also that there's a zip code shift where employees are living further away from the office, which most likely, not the only reason, but a contributing factor is why return to office is failing. Because during the pandemic, people had the opportunity to size down in the sense of the cost of the house, but actually size up in the size of the house. And a lot of these people are building or creating families and starting to take care of them. They're thinking, okay, if I'm in the city and I have this small apartment, especially like a New York area, how can I do that, right? For the same price as something that I can get in suburban or rural areas, and have double the size and give a better experience to my family. But then also as a remote worker, you get to have a better experience. So those are the first two bullet points. The thing that they're also calling out here is the impact that it can have on cities, right? So they say the exodus of high-income earners from urban areas can have significant economic implications for cities, affecting businesses that rely on downtown foot traffic. Urban leaders are challenged with reimagining city centers as entertainment and cultural hubs to adapt to these demographic changes. And then another bullet point that they talk about here is hybrid work dynamics. I'm going to see if I can tie these together as well as the last bullet point. So while remote work offers flexibility and a better work-life balance, some employees still value in-person interactions and office culture. Hybrid work models where employees go to the office a few days a week have become increasingly common, allowing workers to balance the benefits of remote work with the advantage of face-to-face collaboration. This is where we see from researchers like Nick Bloom and other experts in the future of work talk about the future of work is flexible. It's flexibility, right? So it's giving employees the option to come into the office if they want to experience that face-to-face interaction, or to work from home. There's different variations of that. It's all going to depend on your industry. It's going to depend on the culture that you're trying to create as a founder or a CEO or a leader in your organization. But ultimately, this is where we are going. 5 days a week, 9 to 5 is dead. We know that, and the people who are choosing to ignore that are only going to be hit later. I think about this as like a blockbuster Netflix approach, right? If you're not adapting to flexibility, you are Blockbuster. And you might think that you're going to be getting everybody back into the office in 3 years, which is what we talked about in the last episode of the Future of Work Weekly Report. But what we're really seeing is that Netflix is taking over, right? In this example, they're taking over because now they're sending, let's say like this is the version of remote work or flexible work where Netflix is sending DVDs out to you instead of you having to go to the store, right? And that means that we're at the very early stages because we haven't even tapped into streaming yet, which is, in our opinion, that's where Grapevine is going to come in. That's the streaming aspect of the future of work, by giving somebody a virtual headquarters, not just somebody, but the entire company to have a virtual headquarters where the office, the physical office, is really no longer needed, right? And then we have other companies out there like Radius Pro or Radius, where it's kind of like Airbnb for your individual to go and have a workplace if they want to, right? Or you could use it as an offsite. Let's say that you're on the West Coast, you're having an offsite with your team. Instead of going and spending $2,500 on a hotel conference room with not that great amenities, you can go to a place that is a lot cheaper and you get the face-to-face interaction there too. So there's a lot of things happening. We're in the DVD stage, DVD delivery stage, and we're working our way to getting to that streaming aspect in this analogy, metaphor. And so, but here's the thing too, just to add before I go to the actual optimistic view of the last bullet point, is just because you're 100% remote or you're flexible doesn't mean that you can't take the time to gather everybody together on an offsite, or what I call like an on-site because we used to have an off-site. Now we have an on-site because every quarter we go into the office, if you have one or you rent one out, and you have the specific conversations that you needed to have in person. Now people feel a little bit closer to one another, and whenever they use Grapevine to communicate and do the work, now they're closer than ever. And you do that every quarter, and it's really it's the new way of working, you know? So hopefully that made sense. But let's go to the last bullet point here, which is economic resilience. So this is the optimistic part of this article. So despite concerns about the impact of remote work on urban economies, there's optimism about the potential for economic activity to follow workers who relocate to suburban or rural areas. The shift in demographics could lead to the revitalization of new communities and the creation of vibrant local economies. Now, I look at this as two different ways. One, the cities that are being impacted, they're going to be recreated. And I think that it's going to be more of like a staycation ability, right? So I live in Concord with my wife and our golden doodle, and we go to Charlotte, North Carolina a lot. It's literally 30, 20 minutes depending on which location in Charlotte. But we go there to experience something like we would experience whenever we went to Boston or whenever we went to Chicago or New York. It's kind of like each weekend, if we want to, we can go experience it as tourists, even though we're locals, because they have different aspects of what they offered than before the pandemic, because they had to reshift, they had to rethink about how we use these areas that used to be occupied by corporate, by employees, by like offices, right? And so how can we rethink how we have this urban, I think it's urban, the city locations, right? If we can think about that and we get innovative about it, we get creative about it, then the lack of traffic during the week can get made up for on the weekend, right? And then on the flip side, this is the second way that I took this, is that now I live in Concord, as I mentioned. Our downtown is pretty small, but with the reshaping of people, more people living in the rural areas or the suburban areas, now those aspects, those downtowns can be more lively like they used to. It's like bringing back the main street, right? That died because of big cities. So we can look at this in one or two ways. We can say, okay, this is very detrimental and it's going to take down our economy, or it's actually going to right size the city. It's going to kind of decongest it, and the smaller local towns are going to grow and become a little bit bigger and a little bit more entertaining for the locals around there. So it's really, I was going to say a win-win, but it could be looked at as like a somewhat of a win, maybe even a little bit of a loss, but you get a little bit more accurate, but it expands across the state or the county. Right? So that's important. So I think that we can get very optimistic and we get very creative in the way that we think about some of these things, right? Okay. So that is article number 2. That was from the New York Times. Again, that will be in the show notes. If you want to learn more about some of these topics that we're talking about on the weekly report, just drop a comment and say, hey, can we learn a little bit more about XYZ? And then I'll go into maybe a separate video and really talk about that. Okay, third article, it might be the final article. If not, we do have one more after that, but let's see how long this one takes. So this one is from People Matters. It's specifically for like HR and people operations. So this one is strategies for future of work, trends, and employee-centric approaches. So let's look at the first bullet point. Flexibility and work options. This is one of the key takeaways or the highlights. Empowering employees with flexible work options such as hybrid work or flexible people or pay practices contributes to creating an inclusive and dedicated workplace, striking a balance between productivity and flexibility while prioritizing individual well-being and organizational outcomes is essential. So basically what they're saying is kind of what we've been talking about is the future of work is flexible, right? Employees are requiring that flexibility is a part of their culture, a part of the dynamic of the company that they work for. And that's not only the thing, right? And I just want to touch on this a little bit. People often say that people who think about work like this are entitled or they're lazy or whatever the case is. But I think that you have to think about it from other people's perspectives, right? You might be an extrovert and you want to go into the office. You want to have those coffee chats. You want to have that. You feed off of that energy. Now, that's not being taken away from you in a flexible environment, right? You have the option to go into an office, or maybe your company gives you a budget where you can go rent out a WeWork space and you have the opportunity to talk to different people there too, right? But what this is saying is that, let's say, neurodivergent people, and that's a new term that I learned last year, which is, ironically, I have depression and anxiety, that's considered neurodivergent, but also is ADHD, right? And so neurodivergent people in an office setting get distracted very easily, or they have like depressive states. And so sometimes during the day, they might need to lay down just to get through that next meeting, right? And so giving people the ability to giving the people the ability to have that choice is, as it mentioned here, it allows the employers to help individuals focus or prioritize their well-being. And what I've seen through my thesis paper and then just continuous research ever since 2016 is that the happier an employee is, or the more psychologically well they are, the more satisfied that they're going to be with their job, the more satisfied that they're going to be with their life. And as a result of that, they're going to be more engaged in their work environment. They're going to be more committed to the purpose, right? So it's really a win-win for everybody whenever we talk about flexible work options. Now, one of the things that I haven't heard about, so if you're an HR professional or people operations and you know more about this, let me know. It's the flexible pay practices. That was kind of a new one to me there. Okay, as we continue down these bullet points, and I think this will be the last article because it's already getting a little bit long. So HR automation is something that they call out in this article. Automation, particularly in the integration of AI or with the integration of AI, will continue to reshape traditional HR practices. From enhancing recruitment efficiencies to improving talent processes and data protection measures, organizations will increasingly rely on automation to adapt to hybrid work and digital operations. This kind of goes into the year of efficiency, as Mark Zuckerberg would say, right? And what we're talking about here is if HR can leverage automation, then they can have a greater impact on the culture and the community of the company. And what I mean by that is, whenever we look at like enhancing recruitment efficiencies, maybe now we're not interacting with a recruitment firm as much, or we're leveraging a new software that maybe hasn't been created or is just getting started right now, where it replaces and it's better than the application tracking system or the ATS tool that a lot of HR people use, right? And we know that that's not perfect. One, because the system is reading for keywords. And so if you don't have keywords on your resume, you're already getting looked over and you're not getting into the eyes of an actual person, right? So that's already not great. So how can AI improve that? By maybe not looking at just keywords, but looking at full statements, or searching LinkedIn and seeing, okay, this person really talks about this and they know what they're talking about. So there's a lot of capabilities there that we can grow and improve. But then we talk about improving talent processes and data protections. I'm going to focus on talent processes. Like, let's talk about onboarding. I think we touched on this before, but how can we leverage AI to build a more personalized approach to that specific person onboarding from a company level? And then also from a specific position level, how can we leverage the knowledge base that we have, the information that we've already created, and leverage that to build our own LMS tool or our own training program to really focus on delivering that specific person a specific way and how they learn the best, right? That goes back to the experience aspect of it. And then they talk about organizations will increasingly rely on automation to adapt to hybrid work and digital operations. I'm not exactly sure what they mean by automations here, because I'm just a little bit confused on that. But what I will say is digital operations, we fall into that category, right? We are providing a platform for your remote and hybrid team where they can actually come in, call it home, and then not only call it home, communicate, collaborate, connect, and get work done in that one platform. So it's not necessarily automation in certain aspects, but it is more of a digital operations or remote operating system. Shout out Simon Holmes. The next few bullet points here is continuous learning. We talked about this, so I'll just read a little bit here and maybe add a couple of bullet points after I get through with the rest of the bullet points. But upskilling, so continuous learning. Upskilling is crucial in today's dynamic landscape, driven by market dynamics, customer expectations, and evolving technology. Prioritizing both functional and leadership development ensures employees acquire essential skills for improved job performance. And then I'm going to go ahead and read some of these other ones, and then we can tie it all together. Talent development. Prioritizing mediocrity and developing existing talent through role movement flexibility. I would call that job enrichment. Succession planning and creating challenging opportunities are essential for retention, especially in service industries like insurance. And then they also talk about the next bullet point, purpose-driven culture. Driving passion and purpose beyond financial objectives motivates the workforce, particularly the new generation, which is important because by 2025, the majority of the workforce are going to be millennials and Gen Z. And we'll talk about that in a second. The last part in this same bullet point is organizations leverage this woke culture. I didn't know that was there. This woke culture to engage employees, create loyalty, and foster a sense of community contribution. Let me just say, woke to me just means that you're evolving with the times, right? You're giving more people more opportunities. You're opening up and seeing different people. You're seeing different cultures, and you're giving them the ability to grow and learn and have a voice in your organization where before they didn't. So it's not woke to me, it's diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging, making sure that the people that you hire are bringing a diverse outlook compared to you. So not everybody is thinking like you. And that's better because whenever you have these different ideas, these different concepts, these different cultural backgrounds, you can think about from a software, because we're a software company, what does this look like? Not to just me, a white male, but how is this going to affect other people outside of my own experience? And having a diverse set of people is going to help you do that. But then I do want to go back a little bit because we're talking about continuous learning. We're talking about talent development and purpose-driven culture. So continuous learning, we have to give employees a way to continuously learn. That's what we're seeing in most cases from the research that I've seen. Money is important, yes, but even more than that is growth. How can you ensure that your employee is going to continue to grow within a specific time frame? Maybe not specific, but within reason, right? We see this with Gen Zs. They're not staying at companies long like we used to. And I'm probably even a part of that, right? I've job hopped for different reasons, but we're seeing Gen Z take this into their own hands too and really focus on that growth aspect. If they're not getting growth opportunities within 6 months or 12 months, then they're going to look for other positions. They're going to tune out. So how can you do that? And it doesn't always have to be promotion with money. It could be job enrichment, as they're saying here, like role movement flexibility. So let's say that I come into the organization as a salesperson. How can I become a team lead? Or how can I own this account and really bring it home? Right? There's different ways to think about this. And then where we're talking about talent development, succession planning, or career development planning, right? How can I speak with my current employee, learn what their goals are, and how can I implement or develop a career plan to help them go from A to Z, right? Or A to B. That is very, very important, because if they have that development plan, they'll understand, okay, if I reach this milestone, then I am going to get a promotion, or I'm going to get a raise, or I'm going to have a team under me, right? That is going to be important. The more important part is if you say that if they reach this goal, then they're going to have this outcome, you as the employer, as the manager, need to follow through within a reasonable amount of time, right? It could be a month, but if you know that it's coming, go ahead and talk to whoever you need to get this executed, right? Because that is going to be the opposite of motivation for that employee, and they're going to start looking for another position. Okay, purpose-driven. I wanted to touch base on this again because this is very, very important for Gen Z. If they don't feel like the work that they are doing is contributing to something bigger than themselves, they will go look for another position. It doesn't matter if they've been there a week, 2 weeks, a month, 6 months, a year. When they start to lose that purpose feeling, and I would say millennials tap into this too. We're a little bit more reluctant to leave, but Gen Zers aren't. And that's where we're going, right? They're going to be the majority along with millennials in 2025, if not sooner. So this is something that you have to think about as an organization. How can you tap into the purpose of your company connecting to the purpose of that employee? And you need to combine them. You need to find a way to combine them, right? We're doing that with the ability to tag core values and give shout outs in the company or the community newsfeed or the company newsfeed, right? Being able to give rewards and recognition for people's work helps them stay motivated. It helps them, it helps them feel like their company sees them and they will stay longer. So think about that. But it can't just be BS. It has to actually make sense. And then the last bullet point as we wrap up this week's weekly report of the future of work is employee well-being. So forward-thinking organizations prioritize holistic employee well-being, emphasizing physical and mental health, career growth, and a supportive work environment. I wanted to touch on this one last because it's tying every single thing together, right? Before, let's say the organizations that were operating as like an industrial revolution approach, like the conveyor belt, the Henry Ford approach, that's not going to cut it anymore. And we see that whenever we saw the Great Resignation. We see that whenever people started to adapt and adjust the way that they thought during the pandemic. They started asking themselves, why do I work here? Why do I do what I do? Why do we exist? They started asking these questions that made them want to do something better. And so I know that this is about well-being, but if you don't tap into the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and give your employees the must-haves, then nothing else is going to matter, right? And right now what we're seeing, a must-have is work-life balance or work-life harmony, and the emphasis on physical and mental health. Now, you can do this a couple different ways. You can give a stipend if you work 100% remote. You can give them a stipend for physical activities. I know at Kumu, the last place that I worked, they offered employee wellness programs. They would have speakers come in and tell us about ergonomics, making sure that we don't hurt our backs and all that from working from home, which I need to re-listen to because my back hurts right now. But They also provided us with a Calm subscription. So that's like Headspace if you're not familiar with it, but it's a meditation app. You're able to really focus on your mental health. And then another thing is, let's say that you give them a stipend to go to the gym, right? So now you're paying for their gym membership. These are little things that you can do as an organization to provide those benefits that we had in the physical office, but in a different way. Right? Not everybody goes into the office or lives in the same area as we saw in the first article these days. So how can we accommodate and provide perks and benefits that are not only going to be nice to them so they can use it, but also where it benefits the company in the long run? Because if your employee is more physically fit and well, and then their mental health is higher than normal, they're going to be a better worker, right? They're going to be less likely to be absent. They're going to be more likely to be engaged and go above and beyond. So all these things factor into one another. So that is the Future of Work weekly report. This week, we talked about People Matter, strategy for work or future work, trends and employee-centric approaches. We talked about the New York Times, the zip code shift, why many Americans no longer live where they work. And then we talked about business today, the future of skills. Technological disruptions need to be embraced and not feared. So I hope that this weekly report helps you continue to be a better future of work pioneer, and we continue to develop what we're trying to develop as a better working outcome and a better working environment for everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe. And if you know a future of work pioneer who might not have seen this video, go ahead and share it with them. But again, thanks so much for being a part of the Untangled Vines community, and we'll see you on the next video.